We all want shortcuts. We love the word jugaad, right?
Why these large family offices should be looking at 108 VC?
Look at the Indian ecosystem. It's a dumbbell ecosystem. I believe we are just at the cusp of next decade of greatness. You will see great things come out of India. I would just request everybody to wait and watch. And those are going to miss the bus will miss the bus for a decade. And I still believe there are a lot of Indian funds who have been making a difference, are trying to do a lot of things, which will always go to the West to raise capital. It's completely reverse. The Western world is coming to India. Right? I think I've spoken about it at length in many other interviews. I think jugaad is not something that one should be proud of. That is something which helps you in the short term, but you are not creating a long-term foundation for your business. Right? So I think that defines where we are.
Hi, I'm Jyoti Rai, and you're watching EtherWire.Podcast, your quintessential plugin for personal and business growth. You're watching Enigma India series. The series is made up specifically for institutional investors, global investors, and in fact, the way I call it, some of the fence-sitters as well, which are contemplating far too much about whether to invest in India or not. Today's interview is a very special one. Special because the guest himself is a special leader from the Indian markets. Now, well, how do I put across about him to you? As you know, I have always introduced my guest beyond their titles. This time is also no exception. My guest is here breaking the mold in the venture capital industry. He is Indian and an amazing leader that has given the startup ecosystem a lot more, such as his investments, his backing, his generosity, his kindness, and the great mentor that he is. This interview is when this guest uncovers something very fundamental in the venture capital industry, which is the investment thesis. Meet the guest, Nimesh Kampani, founding partner, 108 VC. Hi, Nimesh bhai.
Hi, Jyoti. Thank you so much, and thank you for those wonderful, kind words. And happy to be here and would love to have a very interesting conversation with you.
I think you have contributed substantial to your by investing in startup, of course, one of the things. But I think somewhere you have also been instrumental in giving a facelift, bringing certain more ethics. What is your game?
I think Jyoti, so let's look at what the ecosystem is all about, right? When you look at a venture fund ecosystem, I'll compare it to, say, a basket of vegetables and fruits, right? When you look at that, you have all kinds of fruits, you have all kinds of vegetables. You have the sweet ones, you have the bitter ones, you have the sour ones, but you need all of them, right? And same goes for the VC ecosystem, right? You have very early stage funds, you have seed stage funds, you have accelerators, you have late stage funds, you have growth stage funds. So you need each and every kind of fund. Of course, you will see exceptions of certain rotten apples here and there, just as in case as you have in the basket. But I think that doesn't define the industry. The industry largely is something which has tremendous potential. I think we have grown a lot in the last decade. We've come a long way from where we were. Today we have achieved global scale. And I think the truth of the pudding comes in the fact that today a lot of large global funds which have never raised capital in India are now coming to India to raise domestic capital. That itself speaks a lot, right? In the sense that when India was looked upon as an economy, as a country, right, which will always go to the West to raise capital, it's completely reverse. The Western world is coming to India.
Yes.
Right. So I think that defines where we are. That defines the maturity of the Indian investor, the Indian ecosystem, the Indian founders. So I believe we are just at the cusp of next decade of greatness. You will see great things come out of India. I would just request everybody to wait and watch. And those who are going to miss the bus will miss the bus for a decade.
I like the way, especially, it feels so good that we have always been so Western outlook wise and always chasing it outwardly, and we all head towards West. I think you are making that shift. I think you are providing them the U turn. Why 108?
So I think before that, let me just state factually is that, say 5 years back, we were a very FII dominated economy. The stock markets I'm talking about, right? The FI inflows would determine the markets going up, FI outflows would determine the markets going down. But today the situation is completely changed, right? You look at, it's all about domestic money.
Yeah.
Right. So same goes for private market, and I still believe there are a lot of Indian funds who have been making a difference, who are trying to do a lot of things. We are just the new kid on the block, so of course we'll be very agile, we'll be very nimble. We'll learn from everybody's mistakes, right? And that's what it's all about. You keep your eyes and ears open, stay grounded, and keep on learning. Coming on to 108, right? So when you look at the Indian ecosystem, it's a dumbbell ecosystem, right? And when I say it's a dumbbell ecosystem, it means that there are a lot of funds. There are more than 1,000 funds who are catering to the early stage, right, up to Series A, right? There are fund managers who have been fund managers. There are fund managers who have come from the public side. There are fund managers who have been operators, and the kind of wealth that people have created. I think that is what is happening on the early stage side.
Right.
Now look at the other side of the dumbbell is where all the large PE players are, right? A lot of them are global, a few Indian players as well, and which have raised billions of dollars. So the dumbbell effect is in place, right? Where there is a lot of early stage funding, there is a lot of late stage funding,
Right.
but the middle is empty. That in the whole of last year, there were only 5 funds which raised money in the growth stage, right? And that is where 108 is going to be, right? We, the 3 partners, Sushma, Kaushik, and Shrikant, right? The 3 of us were brainstorming on, which is the stage where we want to be, and we realized growth stage is a huge white space. There are not too many funds playing in that space. A lot of the global funds which have been doing growth stage are moving to earlier and earlier stages, and there is a gap there, and everybody knows, right? 9 out of 10 startups fail to raise their Series B funding, right? And that is where we want to come in. We want to be the funder of choice for these startups who are in an execution mode, who are building tech first, scalable and sustainable businesses. So that's what the focus of 108 is.
Are you also choosy about the investors that pick up 108 VC for its investment theses and philosophy?
Well, I think that is one very important question, and our focus is largely on investors who understand this space, right? Who have, of course, done something in the past, because this sector has risk, right? I cannot go about and sell it to anybody. Like, for example, I'm not going to make a 80-year-old rich person write a check, right? Because it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Right. So I think that is one thing where we want to be selective and choosy, because we want to do the right thing.
Large family offices also invest in startups and they sometimes take direct route as well. Why these large family offices should be looking at 108 VC?
That's a very interesting question, Jyoti. And let us just go back in time, right? 5 years back, family office concept was a very new concept in India. Today, we have around 400 family offices in this country. And over time, what has happened is some have become very large, and they run like a proper VCPE outfit, right? A lot of them have now professionalized their operations. They started by investing. So how does the journey of an investor happen, right? The investor is typically a public market investor. They want to dabble into private markets. So the first lowest risk, highest return criteria for them would go to pre-IPO deals, right? I think pre-IPO started in 2015-16. A lot of pre-IPO direct investments happened with a lot of grey market brokers. Then came a phase when a lot of VCs started raising money. So that's where the participation happened. But over time, what has happened is now there are professionals who are actually part of the investment team in a family office who have access to direct deals, right? So they're all running as a proper VC outfit, right? No, technically they wouldn't be defined as a VC, but they have a professional who's running the show. They have access to the market. They have access to deals. But unfortunately, what happens is, as you see in the ecosystem, right, there's a unsaid hierarchy of investors, right? And family office don't appear at the top, right? And when that happens, right, there is a step treatment given, right, which is where exits don't come your way.
Oh.
Right. So if you invest with 108, of course, as in VC, right, you come in the top tier, right? Second, our objective is to work with the family offices who invest with us, give them the opportunity to come in directly as with co-investment rights. And when you do that, we sit across the table together as a single unit to get exits. Right?
Okay.
And that is where the voice of the family office also will get heard.
Right.
And there are hundreds of them in this country where would have invested good amount of money, but they are lacking in the voice part. And that is where we come in saying that we will be the voice. Let us work together and let us invest together.
I think very well put as an example. It's pretty narrative and descriptive. In this space of Dumble, how is SME IPOs flexing its muscles? If I may ask that, how is it enabling this ecosystem?
No, I think SME IPO has its space, been a unique role it has had to play. Of course, there will be noises on both the sides of the ecosystem, but I know of definitely quite a few companies who are genuinely doing great work, coming in early on the IPO and the listed space. Of course, there are a lot of benefits given to them in terms of information, in terms of compliances, and I think that is helping those smaller promoters, if I may use the word, to actually focus on business and grow it. And actually, we have actually seen in the last few years a lot of transition to the main board. So that itself speaks a lot about that ecosystem.
A role that venture fund like yours will play, the role that the SME exchange will play, and with this context, the domestic capital participation rising is changing the demographic big time, right? And जो कसर रह गई है वो आप पूरी कर ही दोगे. Okay. You mentioned that your fund is focused in that growth tech space. And it is also where the maximum failures are. What makes you so confident about the space where the risk originates, you will get the returns?
Only 1 out of 10 company gets funded for Series B. So we are in the Series B space, right? When you're in that space, you have already mitigated a lot of risk because that
failures are out of your...
Failures are almost gone. Of course, there will be failures, but typically what happens in an early stage, there is only one way to succeed, right? And there are 100 ways to fail, right? Because you don't know what will come and hit you. But as you progress in your journey, right, the risk become lower and lower. It then largely becomes an execution risk. So what we are as funders, the risk that we take is of execution, largely of execution. Of course, other risks still remain, but the degree is different now. At an early stage, the degree of a lot of other things play out. And there are 10 reasons, right, which you can talk about in an early stage, which is where the maximum failures happen. But as you go to late stage, funding is one of the very important reasons why some of the well-executed companies also are not able to grow. Right, and that's why we want to play in that space where companies are focused on execution. Business being executed with the right ethics and with the right compliances.
And you're right that most of the failures are out of your way because your businesses have already tested the waters, they know what's working. At least वो experiment आपके पैसे पे नहीं हो रहे, and which is good to know.
True.
Right? Will it be fair to say this kind of a screening, that's one. Second, the time when you come in at Series B, you are then working less with risk, but more to do with optimization of business models, like literally risk are out.
So risk always remains in any business, right? The nature of risk changes, right? The degree of risk changes. So now your risk is on execution. The large weightage will be on execution. The founders have proven themselves. They already raised multiple rounds of money. That means they got a validation of the business model, what they are building. Ultimately, when they come to us, what we see is the execution capability. Are they going to be able to take this journey ahead and grow? Or become a lifestyle business. And you have seen many such companies, which what happens is they achieve a particular critical mass. And from there, it becomes very difficult to break that mold. For whatever reason, right? There are multiple reasons for that. And those are the companies which become lifestyle businesses. Right. So in different sector, in different, the tech economy, you will see that different businesses have a threshold. There are multiple thresholds, multiple milestones. Right, just like when you launch a rocket, right? There are different levels of atmosphere you have to clear.
Right.
And many times they just are not able to do so. Right. It's very similar to that. In a startup ecosystem, you have to clear multiple milestones. And when we come in, of course, we are coming in much later than the early stage, but our risk remain on hardcore execution.
Right, right. Some of the sectors which are probably your back turf and which you are trying to create a differentiator, if you can share.
At this stage, right, you cannot be focused on any particular sector. Yes, of course, we are tech first, so we'll focus on tech companies. But what happens is, as I said, 1 out of 10 company only moves up. Now,
Right.
if I'm very sector specific, right, what happens? I will then dilute the quality of companies that I write a check in.
Right.
Because there are only 1 or 2 winners.
Okay.
Right. So I have to be sector agnostic. There are a few things that we will not do, which are very logical. As we will not be chasing asset heavy companies. We will not be chasing cash burning companies, right? Because what we want is we want revenues, we want profitability. Typically, if you were to just put it in one line, we are a VC with a PE mindset.
Wow. I think that sets a lot of questions, answers a lot of questions. No, I think fantastic. We also know you, and many of us who have had an opportunity to interact with you personally. You are a very spiritual soul. You're very guarded and very conscious about. I think you're very conscious about your conduct all the time. You're very conscious about the message that you want to leave behind, or you're very conscious as a person, and I've personally witnessed you. How are your other founding partners as conscious as you? Because बोलते हैं ना spiritual लोगों के साथ काम करने में थोड़ी तकलीफ होती है या हमको तकलीफ होती है दूसरों. So how is your team matchmaking?
So firstly, I'll correct you. I'm still a student.
Okay.
So let's first agree on that. No, I think it's see in as you so we'll just change tracks from a VC ecosystem with a humanity or a persona ecosystem, right?
This is your team you have brought together.
Yeah. So I think it took us quite some time to get in place because we knew each other from long before, right? But of course, ultimately, you all have to work for the same objective, right? We have invested together in the past, right? We've been knowing each other for many years.
And you're referring to
both my partners, Sushma and Shrikant, right? Because both come from the ecosystem. So all three of us have been knowing each other for quite some time. We've been friends. We've been investing together. We've been taking advice from each other. So when you do work together, right, it's a very different thing. Right? So yes. Every person has a lot of strengths, right? And I believe in the concept of complementary genius, right? So I have certain strengths, you have certain strengths, Sushma has certain strengths, Shrikant has certain strengths. I think if we can bring together 3 people's strengths, right, that can give you a multiplier impact in what you are building. Of course, there'll be differences, right? Who doesn't have differences? But and that is where the spirituality part helps you, right? And I think it teaches you to be patient. It teaches you to be humble. So those are some of the things that can take you forward and can build a long-term relationship as good as a marriage because it's a 10-year fund to start with, right? When you start a relationship in a fund business, it's all about a long longevity. It's all about how you can work together in adversities, right? In good times, right? And that is what is where I find both my partners very complementary, very supportive, very patient in the way we are running things and doing things. So very happy with where I am. And of course, I think that is the journey now we have begun.
Right, right. But I get where you're coming from, and I like the narrative that these are like marriages, these are serious relationships and commitments, and how spirituality helps you. This question becomes important: is the team that is coming together as a venture capital fund team knows each other from earlier?
Some of the things that would stand out for me are qualities. The first and foremost will be integrity. Right? Integrity is a very important quality any person should have right from your school. Forget about child as well, right from the very beginning. Having the right morals, having the right honesty and being truthful always comes a long way. Right? So that's why I always used to say earlier and as well I say now, trust and transparency are very important factors. So integrity is very important. Transparency is very important. Right? Second, I think I very strongly believe that a person should own up their mistakes, right? So, of course, when you work, when you do something, and when you're trying something new as well, you may end up making mistakes. But the person who stands out is the person who owns them up, right? And just doesn't pass the buck. And then coming onto the spiritual side, right? One of the basic fundamentals of spirituality is being emotionless, right? Is being neutral. That is what you endeavor to be, right? Neither being too happy nor being too sad, neither being too scared nor being too excited, right? I think that is something that helps to wade through different periods of time, right? And these are the two things that I would say any individual should have, but we just forget about them.
Yeah.
Right? We all want shortcuts. We love the word jugaad.
Yeah.
Right? I think I've spoken about it at length in many other interviews. I think jugaad is not something that one should be proud of. That is something which helps you in the short term, but you are not creating a long-term foundation for your business.
By jugaad, you don't make foundations, stronger foundation that last lifetime. And in this process, the institutions have also learned about private markets. So that's where your transparency comes. My question to you is that institutions have also said, Jyoti, there needs to be differentiators. What are the differentiators that one can tell, or the family offices or institutional investors that are looking at your space, someone like you, this team, what is the message for them?
We are in a growth stage. Our focus is different. Our focus is business. Our focus is numbers. Of course, you have to look at the founders, you have to look at the business plan, you have to look at the growth. But what we focus on is something very different from what an early stage investor focus on. Come to late stage. The late stage funds that are there are either pre-IPO funds, or they would just build a company for IPO and get an exit, or they are buyout funds who will buy out companies who have done very well and then strategically sell them out. Right? That is again a very different space. That is where you are looking at an opportunity to make quick money. Right? Where we are is where we want to nurture the founders, we want to work with them, and of course that also comes out with our advisory board that we have brought on table. Is we have the Dean of ISB, Mr. Ajit Rangnekar, who's our one of the board members. We have Mr. J. Chaudhary. He's the architect of the entire startup ecosystem in Hyderabad. Right? He was the ex-MD of NVIDIA as well in India. So I think he is on board. And the third person is Mr. Richard Saldana, who comes from his experience at Unilever. He was a CEO of the global operations for almost 30 years, and then he was a partner at Blackstone. Right? So under their guidance, in what we are building, and of course there is some more surprise coming, which I'm not permitted to announce today, but that is something that will help founders in their journey as they grow. And that will help them nurture. Another big differentiator, I think, which we want to achieve, and with our backgrounds, right? The three of us, I'll just take a quick minute on giving the background. Srikanth has been managing, prior to 108, was managing the investments of the Jubilant Group, both on the listed entities side and on the family office side in the private markets, right? And prior to that, he was the CEO of Hyderabad Angels and has extensive M&A experience in EY. So being a corporate VC and the M&A experience, he has a lot of strategic outlook that he comes with, right? Sushma comes from a hardcore VC ecosystem. She has been running Avishkar for the last 13 years. She has seen multiple VC cycles, right? So she is a very well-known name in the ecosystem. I think everybody in the VC ecosystem knows her, and she brings a wealth of talent, energy, and power to the table. Third, myself, I come with a blend of public and private markets. Right. So when you look at this, one of the things that we said that we stand out for is exits, because we are clearly an exit-focused fund. Whenever we think of investing in a company, the first thought is going to be whether I'm going to get an exit in 5 years or not, right? Because I'll tell you in a very simple language, investing is very easy. Anybody can invest. Right? What makes a fund manager stand out is the ability and the capability to get exits, which you will see the cycle play out in years to come. But for us, that's a very important message that we have given ourselves and to the world, that exits is of utmost importance for us.
Wow. No, I think this way it truly aligns from whatever little experience I had was just like you. Your eye on execution, adding some perfection, efficiency on that when you enter into a startup looking for a lifeline money. I think family offices and institutional investors truly appreciate that space themselves, because the execution makes all the difference at that time. Especially Series B and not that it is not important earlier, but the nature and complexity of execution becomes quite different from there. And this is an interesting way to co-table and co-invite and work it out. I think that's a fantastic message. And now that you're a VC today, the regulator has walked a long route in developing the ecosystem with the feedback and combination of advocacy efforts. How do you see startup ecosystem regulations today? And do you have any insight on the way forward that can help the startup ecosystem?
I think governance is foremost, and in my past life,